roaring kitty is roaming on the internet again. What is up with this phenomenon and what does it mean for us and investors? You are listening to Investing Mastermind podcast. My name is Sina Lundhold.
And I'm Michelle Markey.
So, Michelle, I would like to ask you, since this is an amateur American investor, Keith Gill, or also called Roaring Kitty, please do enlighten us. Who is this person? What is going on right now? Maybe also about what happened in the past. Can you give us like a short introduction to the phenomenon of Roaring Kitty?
Yeah, so this guy started out in both Reddit and YouTube posting his investments. So, like a lot of people out there, other amateur investors, Keith Gill, aka Roaring Kitty, aka Deep F Value. So, I'm not going to say the full thing because this is a family friendly podcast, but this Keith Gill guy, he was just like anybody else. He's just trying to invest for a better financial future for him and his family. And he really believed in this stock called GameStop because he's a gamer. There are a lot of gamers out there who grew up going to this video game store, and he recognized that you could think of GameStop as maybe a value stock. So that's why he's got value in one of his names. It might have been on Reddit, and I think his name on YouTube is Roaring Kitty. But he would make videos and posts about why he thinks this GameStop stock would be a good value to invest in. So he started out with the fundamentals of using good valuation techniques and knowledge to try to make good financial investment decisions. And Keith Gill, I think, started out as a financial analyst somewhere. He used to work at some job, and I think he's probably off on his own. He'd been in hiatus for the last 3 years because back in 2021, he kicked off this meme stock phenomenon where people on the Wall Street Bets Reddit forum were getting all excited about meme stocks like GameStop or Kodak or Hertz or so many other stocks that people on the internet noticed that Wall Street was being short on. And what that means is Wall Street, some firms were expecting some of these stocks to fail. So they would short the stock because they believe the stocks were going to go out of business, like the companies they represent were going to go under. So if you are some Wall Street hedge fund, you might think, oh, nobody goes to GameStop anymore. Nobody wants to buy physical video games or hang out in the store. They're just going to get their online games and they're going to buy their PlayStation or Xbox games straight from the console. Who needs a physical disc anymore? But there are people who have maybe more sentimental value about places like GameStop and they still believed in it. And when they saw this Keith Gill guy believing in GameStop and he invested in it and he made a case for why it might be a good investment. I have no idea if it's a good investment. So none of this is ever advice, what we talk about in this podcast. We're just trying to work through the psychological aspect of what's going on here with what happened when this one amateur investor named Keith Gill, when he invested in this stock, and then that inspired the masses on the internet, a lot of unknown people, to also want to jump in on the bandwagon. And that's why a lot of people got into this meme stock investing. It became this phenomenon of a lot of people on the internet rising up against Wall Street and trying to take down the hedge funds. And, there's all this speculation. Was it collusion? Was it not? Who knows? But there's a lot more we could talk about. And I also just want to add there was a movie about this called Dumb Money, and I watched that movie. So watching that gave me a little bit of color and context as to what some people might have experienced when they initially joined in on this meme stock frenzy back in 2021. And now we're back. So Sina, what else do you want to add to this so far?
I don't want to add much, but I actually have a few questions, Michelle. So everything went on in 2021. People were bored. It was around Corona time, so people did some dumb stuff on the internet, to be honest. People were bored, something had to happen, some excitement. So some of these meme stock rose to fame. But how come we're talking about Keith Gill and Roaring Kitty again? What's going on these days? How come he's all of a sudden a topic now? Why haven't we forgotten about him?
Well, interestingly, I think back then in 2021, Keith Gill had to testify in front of Congress about his actions. Like, what was he exactly doing? There was speculation. Was it legal? Was it not? Did he, like I mentioned, did he cause collusion on the internet where it means that people are scheming together to try to take some collective action? So, was there any of that going on? And maybe it seems like maybe he didn't get into big legal trouble from the government perspective. So maybe everything worked out like that. He wasn't guilty of any, potential influencing people directly to take this. It's not like he told people to invest in GameStop. So maybe that's why it was fine. But now all of a sudden, I don't know why he came back onto the internet. He closed down a lot of his social media profiles back then out of all the uproar that happened. And now 3 years later, he's supposedly back because I think he may have revealed on some Reddit forum that he now has like a $260 million or more or less. I'm not exactly sure what it is because I hear different figures from different sources.
Yeah, I
But
think it's because the stock price increased. I think that's why the numbers are different. Sorry to interrupt.
yeah, so whatever it is, but it's like over $100 million, and people are speculating now. Why is Keith Gill back? Why? How did he amass such a big fortune in GameStop? Why did he do it? What is causing this? Why would he tell the world that he's in this stock 3 years later? Like, what is the purpose of doing that? So there's so many questions that we can talk about here today, and we'll just share some of our opinions. That we don't really know the answer because I don't think there's been an interview at the time we're recording this of what explains why Keith Gill is back in the public eye. But there's some things that have happened. So we know that Keith Gill has revealed this new stake or this updated stake, and the public has reacted, and that's caused a lot of people to want to jump back into GameStop. So why? We don't know what the point of doing that is. So that's one question. Another question is this legal? Is it okay for Keith Gill to be publicizing this? Or maybe he's got investors that are in it with him. So maybe it's not really his direct position, but maybe he's got some private investors he's now managing money for. And maybe he's like a Monish Pabrai or Guy Spear, and he just happens to have a fund that's like entirely GameStop. And now there's got over $100 million in it, and it's perfectly legal. So there's so many questions we have. We don't know why he's doing this. And then there's E-Trade that's supposedly considering kicking Keith Gill off of its platform. Why would they do that? Are they worried that he's trying to manipulate the stock? So yeah, so many questions. I mean, what do you think about some of this so far?
Yeah, well, there's definitely 100% some manipulation going on, whether or not he can be charged for anything about this, but in my opinion, it's super manipulative what he's doing right now. So what worked back in the day, he's doing the same thing again. He's kind of creating, and because of his position today, everybody knows about him, or not everybody, but he's kind of commonly known within the trading world. Now, all of a sudden, he's a name and he does something like that, and people jump on the stock again, which increased the price. Last time, Keith Gill got out of this stock with a ton of money, and this time, potentially, he's going to get out of it again, and a lot of people out there are going to get hurt. It's not going to be Keith Gill, but it's going to be other people that's going to jump into this stock. At some point, the price will fall again, most likely. Of course, I can't tell the future, but if it's going to be like last time, it's going to fall like a rock off a cliff, the stock price. And so it's just highly, highly manipulative. And I know that here in Denmark, if you're a finance influencer and investor, you really have to be careful about what you share on the internet. There's been some different cases here where this financial influencer or big name within the Danish community shared some stock tips or some thoughts around that. And here it's not allowed to do that, which is also why I'm always super careful about not mentioning any companies, because I don't want to potentially influence anything or be seen as an influencer or get in any sort of trouble. So, had he been here, he would have been in a lot of trouble, especially now where he have a big following. He would have been in a lot of trouble, but I don't know if it's the same in the US. How about you, Michelle? Some of the questions you answered, do you have any opinions or not? Because I do have more questions for you as well.
Yeah, the part that I want to react to is I agree it feels manipulative and I think it's kind of foolish, like knowing that you have such a big following and there are a lot of people who get excited seeing him. I mean, it's just like anybody else. You think you have a sort of role model. Like if I see Warren Buffett investing in a stock, I might be like, oh, should I invest in this stock that Warren Buffett is invested in? So you're going to influence people when you are a big name, and that's what he has. And whether we know his motivations for doing what he's doing, he could be taking a very foolish action right now by being so public. Like there's a certain reason why all the super investors we know and admire go to great lengths not to publicly talk about some of their holdings unless it has to be publicly released. Maybe to the point of what I mentioned earlier. If he is running a fund, what if he now has over $100 million of assets under management, and that's why he can be public because it's allowed. He's gotten some big people to invest with him, and that's fine. So he could be doing this very legally. You can just release it because that's what the other super investors release in their 13F filings. So maybe it's okay, but I think it's a little bit foolish if you don't have certain guardrails to be out there. It would be like as if Warren Buffett is talking up crypto stocks and you're like, wow, Warren Buffett's in Bitcoin. Like imagine if that were the story and then Bitcoin would go to the moon. And of course that's not the case, but
I
it
actually
kind of
think I
feels.
saw a Facebook ad the other day on that. No, I'm kidding.
Really?
No,
Oh,
like
I was gonna say that would be nuts. Like,
yeah.
so can you imagine people getting manipulated by someone? It might not be Keith Gill. And also that makes me wonder, is it really Keith Gill? Like, do we know for absolute certain it's really him? Unless it's some AI bot that's like pretending to be him and then publishing these things and it's coming out of some random place no one knows. So do we really know if it's the true meme lord or not? Like you would hope the people who are doing the journalistic reporting have validated if it's truly him, but it just has this weird unsettling feeling about it. Like it doesn't feel fully ethical or it doesn't feel right. There's something that feels uncomfortable about how this has come back into the public eye. And I think if Keith Gill, if his motivation is to motivate people, then I feel like that's not right. And I hope he's not doing that. I hope that he's trying to do right by people. And like, I don't know what exactly, obviously, but if his intent is to manipulate, then I don't agree with doing that. And I think that could be very foolish for him.
One thing I was thinking about, are we all wrong? Is Keith Gill, in fact, the new Warren Buffett? Doing this, all the valuations and actually, being the spokesperson of what is it he's doing? What do you think? Is he the new Warren Buffett? And we're just, totally wrong in our perception here of this person.
Maybe. I mean, there's a possibility, just like how Warren Buffett took over Berkshire Hathaway, which was a failing textile mill business. What if Keith Gill is trying to take over GameStop and be use it as a future vehicle? Imagine 50 years from now, GameStop is this huge conglomerate and it owns horse farms and toothpaste and it owns all these different businesses. And it started out as once upon a time a video game retailer in the mall. Like, who knows if it becomes a future Berkshire Hathaway? That could be a great point, Sina. You're raising a very interesting question that we misunderstand him, and that's causing us to think his intentions are bad, but maybe his intentions are not so bad, and he's actually saving this company he believes in, just like Warren Buffett sort of saved Berkshire Hathaway. I mean, he didn't really save the textile business, but he saved the entity known as Berkshire Hathaway, and it became something else. So that's a great point, Sina. I didn't think of it like that before, but I suddenly feel a lot less unsettled, like in thinking positive thoughts. Like when you have positive notions about someone's intentions, it's suddenly so much better. I was thinking like gloom and doom before, and now I'm thinking much more positive about it.
Yeah, and we don't know. The thing that kind of bothers me is, again, using, in a gambling way, using the internet. I mean, in the beginning, the first time he did it, no one could have ever known that it would gain the heights that it would at that time. It was kind of like, okay, some random person actually on the internet mentioned a stock and it just exploded a couple of years ago when he started this, and now he's a name. So of course, there's going to be a lot of discussions, but potentially he could have done then the sort of Warren Buffett analysis, and maybe that would pull more people into doing valuations of companies. He's definitely opened up for that in the fact that what he said about GameStop stop and how he was looking into to the business the first time at least that he was talking about GameStop. But again, and as you mentioned, is it another Berkshire Hathaway? When I think of GameStop, I immediately think of Blockbuster. That place where when I was a child that you could go down and get some videotapes, some of those big videotapes. Maybe there's some listeners here that don't even never seen a VHS tape, but I see GameStop when I think about that store, I just think about Blockbuster. So maybe he could potentially be sitting on a new Berkshire Hathaway sort of business where it will fail, but then as you also mentioned in the future it could be this huge conglomerate. We simply don't know that, and we don't know his intentions. But what I could see, in articles online is that he's got call options placed in the business so that potentially, we could own, was it 17 million shares? And being the fourth biggest shareholder in the company, if unless he rolls the option, which means, he extends the expiration date. So, we're all thinking, what the heck is going on here and what is it?
Yeah, another article I saw suggested he had used call options to potentially get in on the stock at some of its highest trading point. So if he bought call options, the higher it traded, maybe he bought a call option for a much lower amount. And then when it got sold off, maybe he got the shares at a lower price. So I don't ever do call options in buying them. So I don't really know exactly what that's like, but I'm just guessing that maybe, let's say it was at a higher price and he bought a call option at a lower price, like say $2. So if the stock goes to $2, he now buys a ton of it for like dirt cheap. And so no wonder he can have amassed such a big position over time, over the last 3 years. If, as it's being kicked in the dumps, he's just buying more and more of it as time goes on. And that maybe that's how he came to own such a big position of it, potentially through his own efforts. Maybe no one else is in it with him. So I don't know what exactly he did, but that's what some of the internet is speculating, how he came to have such a big position in GameStop.
It is crazy times, right, on the stock market these days. We also had last week where Berkshire Hathaway stock fell 99%. I don't know if you saw, Michelle, but the A shares actually fell down from 600 and something thousand and fell down to a price of $180 per share. And it was a technical error that actually happened on that. There's a whole lot of speculation out there on that, what
Mm.
actually happened. It was not only Berkshire, it was a few companies, Gold and AMC Entertainment, etc., actually had that happen. So, and there's a lot of conspiracy theories going on out there. Also, some people had some limit orders on the stock at certain prices, and then when those limit orders actually kicked in, the stock price had grown to 700,000. So some people have been really, really unlucky and maybe gotten maybe put a limit price on the stock on $1,000 or something like that. But then as the stock price move up, the limit order, it can't always, like it doesn't always exercise at that exact price. Sometimes it's
Mm-hmm.
slower, especially if there's a huge drop or a huge increase. those limit orders or stop losses, they don't kick in immediately. So, there was been some stories of people that actually had to buy the share at $700,000 and maybe, they didn't have the money. And funnily enough, it's just like, oh, too bad. You just too bad you have to buy it at this price. But the people who actually maybe were able to get it at a cheaper price, it's like, oh no, you can't keep the price. This was a technical error, etc., etc. So there's a lot of that kind of speculation going on. I don't know if
Wow.
it's true or if it's just speculation, but it was,
Yeah.
just within like a few short seconds last week on Monday morning. Pretty
Wild.
crazy.
Wow.
Hmm.
Crazy. Yeah, I can't believe, that something like that can send stocks on a wild ride, but I guess some of that could happen in the day and age of a lot of, say, what they call quantum trading, with a lot of people using computers to do trading. And there's a lot of probably pressure on trading houses to make sure their platforms, like the exchanges, are able to handle and withstand the kind of volume and trading activity that could happen. And like there's some big repercussions that could happen depending on the, like, if there's technical glitches and things like that. So yeah, I mean, like you said, crazy times in the stock market. And it's as if like some of the meme stock frenzy never ended from 2021. Like the market is still pretty elevated since the March of 2020 when everything dropped out of massive fear, and everything's just been up since then. Like it almost makes me wonder if this is a new permanent plateau. And they like, there's always this question of, is this time different?
I was just about to say that. This time is
Yeah,
different. Yeah.
I don't know, but
Which
like
is Howard Marks, right? Yeah, that's the reference that we're referencing. Yeah.
yeah, tell people about that a little, Sina.
No, it's just Howard Marks, who, who's a famous investor using Warren Buffett style. He's written a book, and, it's like this time it's different. That's what everybody says all the time. This time it's different, believing that, okay, now the stock market is totally different from when it ever was before. There's all these people coming in, experts that are saying, well, this time it's different because dot, dot, dot. But every time it turns out that nothing is really different. It's still human emotions in play. I know there's AI and automations right now, but we still have humans investing in the stock market and trading stocks. And human aren't always rational. So we don't
Yeah, and
know if it's going to be different this time, but it's just something that is being said. This time it's different, and it never was in the past.
right. And maybe we should talk more about that in a future episode about
That's a great
how,
idea.
there's been so much AI frenzy lately, and that's kicked a lot of some tech stocks to new heights, like Nvidia. But there are some signs that maybe the initial hype around AI is starting to quell a little bit. It's maybe not as hyped up as everything made it out to be. So maybe we'll keep that in mind for another time. But yeah, time will tell what will happen with GameStop. Who knows what Keith Gill is up to? We will see this, and maybe there will be a sequel to the movie Dumb Money someday about whatever is happening right now with GameStop. So I guess to be determined.
The sequel is definitely playing right now, so we will be back on Tuesday.
Till next time.
If you enjoyed the show and found the content informational, we would be super grateful if you would leave us a review and follow us wherever you get your podcasts so you automatically get new episodes in your feed. We publish a new show every Tuesday.
The contents of the Investing Mastermind podcast are for educational, informational, and entertainment purposes only. None of this is investing advice, and if you need help in your personal situation, please consult with a professional.